peace in the Middle East? Does this help with with finally getting a Palestinian state? And if you measure it against that and it measures out well, you do it. There are all kinds of people who I intend to speak to in the near future, and people will go, my goodness, Emily, really? I go, they have a stake in this. They are important players in this, and I will do everything I can in my power in relation to this, in my position as chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, to make sure that the Foreign Office is as good as it can be, absolutely at the top of its game, because I do think that Britain has a role at this time.
So don't do what makes you feel better. Don't say what you may be thinking. Do what might produce a better result.
Think about how good you'll feel if you get there.
Yes,
and how much it is that you are prepared to, you have to be brave and risk it.
So do you have some sympathy with the defenders of Donald Trump who say this idea of the two-state solution has been completely dead for decades? Donald Trump got involved in the Abraham Accords, and that was the best progress that had been made for a very, very long time. And maybe Trump is the one who's prepared to rethink, not necessarily endorsing what he said this week about, as it were, moving millions of Palestinians outside of Gaza. But do you think that actually it is time for a radical rethink about the Middle East because 2 decades of diplomacy have failed?
I think that we need to really go for it, and I don't think that we have. I think that over the last 2 decades, people have just put it in a box as being too hard. But I do think that the only solution is for there to be a Palestinian state and an Israeli state. Nobody's going anywhere. Nobody's going anywhere. And I think you also, I hear what you say about, the first term of Donald Trump, but in terms of what he actually did, what he did was that he moved the embassy, the American embassy, into Jerusalem, and that was not something which helped in terms of furthering the peace in the Middle East.
Well, a lot of people don't really get much access to the world of diplomacy. And every day, people who've done what you've done, which is negotiating trade deals, or the diplomats who work at the Foreign Office, they're doing deals all the time. How much of a change is it when Donald Trump, who's this billionaire property developer from Queens, comes in and everything's a deal, everything's a negotiation, everything he says is just a way of sort of him anchoring the start of a negotiation? Does it feel like a big departure, not just in policy terms, but in his approach to diplomacy?
Look, it is a departure, but I do think we shouldn't underestimate that behind the scenes, some of this stuff can be quite transactional always, right?
Yeah.
And we do see that in the negotiations over Brexit and with the EU. Even now